Thank you, Representative Lilly. I would like to welcome you to the committee. And we have before us, I would like to move House File 800 be recommended to be placed on the general register. If you would like to, we now have the bill before us, if you'd like to present the bill, and we'll move forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. It's nice to be back. It's been a couple of years since I've been before, well, in person anyways, State Gov Finance. So House File 800 is a bill that ratifies two collective bargaining agreements between the state employees and the executive branch. And last year we passed, I think it was 18 other contracts, and these are the two that are outstanding, so we're trying to catch up. So it's playing back onto past efforts and getting everybody kind of up to speed, and then we'll be for you later with other contracts that are negotiated between the executive branch and the labor groups for the current biennium. The contracts are pretty straightforward. The Minnesota Government and Engineers Council employees and the Minnesota State colleges. And then there's some MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding, and those are quite interesting. Their contracts are already finished, so there's some other things that, and you've been hearing this all morning, that are struggling with incentives to keep employees. So some of these are fitting with the morning's discussion, certainly, and trying to get retention, which has not been easy in the state of Minnesota. Clearly, just like the private market, the state has struggled with that, and there's shortages. I had a fact that was brought to me this morning that was interesting. In Department of Health on Subdivision 3, there's almost 30% vacancies at one time during COVID. So that was almost 400 vacancies. But there's a couple things of interest just before I get to the real smart person of the whole group here. But you know, there's some good things in here and to try to retain. But one of the things that was interesting to me that stands out is we, as a state, we've some of our firefighters are sent, and we have a mutual aid. So our firefighters will often go to other places, and so there's federal law that these employees would get a rest time to regroup before they get thrown back into their local fire departments or whatever. DNR, these are actually DNR, not public firefighters. Sorry, I'm wrong. But back to the DNR, and so this gives them a time to recoup, and it matches up with federal government. But there's all sorts of things like that are in here, retention and different things to get employees up to speed. With me, I have Michelle Weber, who's, like I said, is with the Subcommittee of Employee Relations, SER, and she works with the legislature to broker with the executive branch. We also have MMB folks in the crowd later on if we need other questions answered. But Michelle Weber, I'd like to pass it to her, and she could kind of go through the bill and say what's really in there.
Thank you, Ms. Weber, for being with us today. If you would state your name for the record, and then please begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm Michelle Weber with the Legislative Coordinating Commission, and we provide staff administrative support to the Subcommittee on Employee Relations. Section 1, Subdivision 1 of the bill provides ratification for the Minnesota Government Engineering Council, and that covers about 1,123 employees. It provides a 2.5% across-the-board increase on July 1st, 2021, as well as July 1st, 2022. It also continues step increases for employees who are eligible, for engineers who are eligible, of approximately 3.9%. And there's approximately 35% of the engineers that are not at the top of their salary and would be eligible for that step increase. Section 1, Subdivision 2 provides ratification of the Minnesota State College Faculty Agreement. That covers 3,961 faculty at the community and technical colleges. And this provides a step increases averaging 3.2% for faculty that meet certain criteria. And it also provides a $1,700 across the board increase for all faculty. The increased costs of each of those agreements for the Minnesota Government Engineering Council in the current biennium, it's a 4.32% increase, and then in the future, in the next biennium, it's a 6.56% increase to the overall costs of the agreements. The Minnesota State College Faculty Agreement has a 3.57% increase in this current biennium to the cost of the agreement, and a 5.10% cost in the next biennium. Section 2 of the bill, as Representative Lilly mentioned, ratifies several memorandums of understanding that were submitted to the subcommittee since the last legislative session adjourned, and those memorandums of agreement are similar to several memorandums of understanding that were ratified last legislative session for other agreements that were already in place that provide recruitment and retention incentives. They provide coverage for employees who may need to miss work due to a child who may be quarantining. They also provide, as Representative Lilly mentioned, rest and recuperation leave for DNR employees who are returning from firefighting in other jurisdictions. There's some incentives for certain Minnesota lottery employees who meet certain sales goals, as well as pay differential for Department of Revenue employees who may be working in other states and in cities with higher costs of living, wage rates for certain DHS employees. It establishes some compensation for employees at the state academies to attend training sessions, and it also permits the Secretary of State to offer achievement awards to the AFSCME employees. The final section of the bill provides effective date immediately upon passage. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and it's my understanding that someone from Minnesota State, as well as MMB, is here as well. If you
Is anyone else wanting to testify, or should we move to member questions? Okay. Member questions? Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the work here, Representative Lilly and Ms. Weber. I worked with you on a couple other things. You do a great job. Thank you for your service. Could you clarify on, I'm just looking at the summary, subdivision 2, the memorandums submitted dealing with incentives up to $10,000 for the Nurse Association. Can you just explain that a little bit for us, if you wouldn't mind?
Ms. Weber.
Madam Chair and Representative Koznick, it's my understanding that the agencies offering those retention and recruitment and retention incentives have to develop a plan approved by MMB, and it might be more appropriate for MMB if there's additional information you'd like on that to respond.
Well, Madam Chair, yeah, I just kind of, it says,
Representative Koznick.
thank you, Madam Chair, incentives up to $10,000 after developing a policy that governs the eligibility and parameters of the program and receiving approval from MMB. So I'd kind of like a little bit more information. If somebody from MMB is here to clarify that for us, I think that would be appreciated.
Thank you, and please come forward. If you'd state your name for the record, please, and then proceed with the answer.
Good morning, Chair Cleburne. My name is Jennifer Klausman. I'm the Enterprise Director of Labor Relations at Minnesota Management and Budget. Excuse me. In terms of the plans that the agencies put together, they develop parameters as to target the needs that they are seeing for either recruiting or retention strategies. So with respect to the Minnesota Nurses Association, what we're seeing out in the private sector is higher levels of recruiting incentives, which is where we had worked with the agencies to develop the framework for that. So when an agency is requesting to offer those incentives under the MOU, they would submit the criteria in which they are looking to have those offerings made when they are recruiting or hiring nurses.
Thank you very much. Representative Koznick, a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. It just wasn't clear. So obviously, our nurses played a critical role in our healthcare system, and so the incentives are for nurses doing the work, or is this for someone developing a policy that's recruiting nurses and retaining them? So is it the nurses, or is it somebody developing a program? That's what I'm trying to clarify, if we could.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Chair Cleburne, Representative Koznick, the incentives are for the nurses.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Representative Nadeau?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to follow up on that. So is the in the settlement sheet, does that include the financial impact of those incentives?
And who would you,
Matt, I can
okay,
If
Ms.
it's
Weber?
okay, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and Representative Nadeau, the settlement sheet does not include the incentives because they were negotiated through a memorandum of understanding. What the settlement sheet reflects is the original collective bargaining agreement costs that are anticipated that were settled. So if a collective bargaining agreement included a 2.5% adjustment across the board, that's what the settlement sheet reflects. In many cases, when we received the information from MMB, they didn't quite yet know how many incentives would be offered, and so in several cases, those costs were not quantified yet.
Representative Nadeau?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky. I'm just curious, where does that money come from? If in fact, let's say there's 1,000 incentives, or 100, or 10, or whatever, where does that funding come from?
And the response from MMB? Please again state your name for the record.
Hi, Jennifer Klausman. I am MNB. Thank you, Representative Nadeau. The money is coming from the agency's budgets.
Thank you, Ms. Klausman. Any further?
Just one more follow-up.
Representative Nadeau?
So as I read this, and I apologize, this is the first time I've seen a settlement sheet like this from the state. So as I look at this, it looks like there's only one on here that has not been ratified. There's one that's still under negotiation. Is it this Service Employees International Union that hasn't been ratified yet?
Ms. Glassman? Or Ms. Weber?
Yeah.
Ms. Weber?
Madam Chair and Representative Nadeau, the Service Employees International Union was actually an agreement that was ratified during the 2021 session for the current biennium. You may have also heard that they recently reached a tentative agreement, and that there was a bill introduced, I believe, yesterday in the House that will potentially bring that forward. It usually comes forward through a separate bill because it's under the jurisdiction of the Department of Human Services. So that usually flows separately.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Since Representative Lilly, did you want to close?
No, thank you, Madam Chair and members. Certainly, myself or Ms. Weber will be available for questions if you have any, but I appreciate your support, and we're so blessed as a state to have good workers that are doing good work, and especially during COVID, they really shined, but so I think appreciate your support this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now with the outstanding committee administrative staff that we have, and Ms. Rudolph, I have the appropriate language. I will move that House File 1199, oh, sorry, I have the 800. House File 800, I renew my motion to recommend House File 800, but we would like to place it on the general register with a further recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion prevails.